Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Hunter.
As often as I can make it, yes.
I appreciate it, especially for a morning show. And your co-host, Spaz.
Powered by energy drinks, as usual.
I did not have time to get one this morning. I am. Oof. Folks, we're doing a morning show, so it's 6 a.m. Here in California for Spaz and I. It is 9 a.m. for Hunter. And it is 3 p.m. in, okay, here we go. I'm going to try it. Pamplona, Spain. How'd I do? Is that okay?
That was great.
Oh, good. Joining us from there, I'm not going to try it again, there in Spain is, okay, I'm going to try it. Fernando Zapata.
Very good.
Is that good? Okay. Whew. I always get nervous trying to say people's names right because names are very important. You know, you always want to get it right, and so I always try really hard to get someone's name right. Folks, today we're going to talk about a game that Fernando is working on called Hunternet Starfighter. It is currently in what would you call it? A private alpha?
It's a closed alpha.
Closed alpha.
But anybody can join if they fill out the registration form.
Yeah, on itch.io, there's a link to itch.io. It's on itch.io, but there's a link. There's going to be a link in the podcast notes and whatnot. You can sign up for the closed alpha. And it's basically like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter evolved, basically. And we were fortunate enough to get together this past Saturday to play for about 2 hours. I think it was about 2 hours. We played several different modes. We played against bots. We played against each other. And I'm just going to tell you all now, folks, if Star Wars Squadrons doesn't work out, which it very well might not, because we don't know. This is a game.
Too soon to tell.
Too soon to tell. Regardless, this is a game you definitely want to keep an eye on because it really captures. It does so much right. It really captures the classic starfighter fighter cockpit games while really adding a lot of its own flair, and that's kind of what I want to talk about in a moment. But Fernando. Before we dive into the game itself, let's talk about its history. When did you start working on this? I know you said in your trailer what inspired it, Battlestar Galactica and Star Wars. But what really got the ball rolling on this, and when did you start working on it?
Wow. Well, there's two ways to look at this answer. The short form is when I started working on Hunternet Starfighter, and that is less than 2 years ago. But in fact, the real story goes much further because Hunternet Starfighter was built on the bones of a previous attempt. And that was built on the bones of a previous attempt. So really, Hunternet Starfighter as a concrete vision, very similar to what it is today, less than 2 years ago. But Hunternet and me working on a space shooter or a shooter in general, that goes back about 8 years now, I think. It basically started out, and then before that, it was my previous attempts of being an indie game developer. There's even more history, but just going to what eventually became Hunternet Starfighter, I started out with just wanting to make some sort of shooter. And the first version was really simple. Had no final art, just monkey head from Blender. It's the mascot for that 3D application. And I didn't have a general theme in mind, but I knew I loved flying games, whether it was X-Wing or flight simulators. But I didn't have a theme in mind. So the first version was just a monkey head that could fly around and shoot. Now, even till today, that very first weapon is basically the laser gun, or in the game it's called the plasma cannon, which is very similar to like the Star Wars lasers. That is still there from 8 years ago. But over time, I tried lots of different things, like make it fly like a helicopter, make it fly like an airplane. I changed themes. About 2016, I switched to a space theme. And at that point, the name was called Hunternet Space Combat Unbound. I worked on that for a while. And then about less than 2 years ago, I took Hunternet Space Combat Unbound, which I believe Jim played, and moved into a more simulation direction. The reason I did that is when I first started, I just didn't have the confidence of making a space sim. So that's part of the reason. And by the time I had been working on Hunternet Space Combat Unbound, I realized that I had the ability to do it, and I saw an opportunity, and that's why I decided to switch, and also switch to something that was more in my wheelhouse anyways, whereas before I really tried to make something super creative and oddball to help it stand out against the big boys. I hope I didn't ramble too much, but that's the basic history.
No, and what you have made so far, folks, this game is really impressive. I want to talk about what sets it apart from other games. One thing I really want to talk about is the way you set things up in the game, the controls and whatnot. Folks, you can set up your flight sticks and whatnot while you're in the game from a simple arrow-based menu. I've never seen anything like it before. Usually you have to leave the game and go to options and then go to controls and set up each axis and blah, blah, blah. And it's very tedious. But here, you're in your fighter and you use an arrow-based menu to just select your axis from jump. I've never seen that before. It's amazing. I wish more games did it now. I wish every game did it now. Because I've never seen something so elegant. So I have to just give you props for that, because I think I've never been able to set up controls so quickly in anything. That was just utterly amazing.
Yeah, not gonna lie. The mouse and keyboard stuff was pretty top notch.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, some of that stuff goes back 8 years. That's where, even though Hunternet Starfighter, as the name Hunternet Starfighter, and the razor focus on just that, on starfighters, started about 2 years ago, a little bit less than 2 years ago. The mouse controls, the way I do the mouse controls and just the controls in general, a lot of that stuff goes back much longer. The netcode, the netcode performance is another thing that really stands out. That's code I started developing 8 years ago and has been refined over time. And I get that a lot with the joystick controls. Most people just follow the traditional formula where you press escape and go to the controls menu and map it, and it's always been a pain in the butt. You have to go back and forth, see how it is. And with space games, with there being so many options and so much flexibility, it was horrible. And you always saw people working around it by profiles, sharing profiles, using third-party programs. And when I sat down to do it, I wanted to make it easy. And since one thing that I have done a lot over these years is that I iterate a lot on everything, and I play my game constantly. And whenever I can find even a small little tweak to make it easier to use, to make it a little bit, more finely polished, I always put the time in there. And yeah, I don't know why nobody has done it. I definitely think it's the right way to do it.
It's amazing. I too don't know why anyone else has done it, because so when we flew the other day, I used my full HOTAS, my joystick throttle and pedals, but Hunter and Spaz, you guys used mouse and keyboard?
Yep.
Yeah, and you guys were just as effective with the mouse and keyboard as I was with a joystick, which is no small feat.
I think that goes to just Fernando kind of using common sense with the keyboard, because the mouse clearly makes sense on how you use it to move around, but I've seen at times where some people don't, some developers don't map the Q and E to the roll and drift or strafe with A and D. It just the common sense thing is to use the whole QWE ASD section as part of the movement, whereas I've seen some folks put it down on Z and X. I'm just this doesn't make sense. I've got to remap this. Whereas just out of the gate, it's kind of I just started playing and I was just I don't have to touch anything. This makes sense. My brain just this makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try it with a mouse and keyboard. I'm very curious now. But one thing that also struck me that I really liked is you brought this up on the during the play session the other day. Is a lot of space combat games you feel have an over reliance on radar,
Yes.
and so you want to make things more reliant on the good old Mark I eyeball.
Exactly.
I did find myself using my eyes more than trying to look at the radar.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Pick up your visual sensors.
Yeah.
And it actually makes things more tense. I think it actually makes things a lot more in a good way. In a good way, I think it makes things a lot more tense.
Well, as an example, this is what's so cool. As an example, when we were doing the 2v2 stuff, I was actually going up. Like the way I was playing it was I was actually able to watch Fernando and Spaz coming in because I was taking a high route above like the asteroids up to the far left of where I was. It's kind of hard to explain without because I'm moving my hands and the audience clearly isn't seeing me. But like I took a route that put me up and above at a vantage point, but I was able to actually watch you guys come in. And there were several times where Fernando was like, he's behind me. How did he get there? It was kind of funny, like that moment of I was tracking the whole thing visually rather than trying to rely on the radar that was there. So it very much was fun.
And there's also a thing, and there's also a really neat thing in this game that also makes you rely on your eyes. It's called silent running, which once I started using it, I could not stop using it. I'll be completely honest. I used it many times. So explain silent running, because you can probably do it better than I can.
So silent running, basically the game does have a radar and also has and really it's a radar and a scanner array. Radar is limited to 1 kilometer, but it can track unlimited number of targets, and it shows you a detailed, not really detailed, but it gives you a good idea where they are within 1 kilometer of you. But then you have a scanner array that can track up to 3 targets, and that's limited to 5 kilometers. And what silent running does is if your thrusters are below a certain output level, you do not show up in the scanner array and you do not show up on the radar. And there's a key dedicated. There's a set of engine management keys, Z, X, and C as in cat by default, that you can press to change basically how your thrusters are configured. And by pressing the silent running key, C, it prevents you, even if you put 100% throttle or 100% strafe on any input, it prevents it to go above that limit. So it guarantees that you stay under the radar. And at the same time, if you're flying with flight assist on, it puts you with flight assist off, which means that you're drifting all the time. And your movement, you can accelerate to any speed because this is outer space. It's just going to take you longer because you're doing it in little small bursts of thruster energy.
Right.
And and it makes it hard for people to see you because not only is it the radar, there's also your HUD. Your HUD shows targets up to 2 kilometers away. It highlights them even if you don't have them targeted. But again, if they're silent running, they won't show up. And if you don't see that little spaceship sneaking, you can miss it, right? Even it's right in front of you. It's so crazy because, fighter pilots talk about this all the time, how they have to be, really aware of what's going around, maintain their situational awareness, but you also have to focus on your target. But if you're doing that, even something that is coming straight at you and is clearly visible on the screen, if it's not highlighted by that HUD and has a big old circle around it because they're silent running, you won't see it. And you won't get any warnings either, any alarms going off. So it's an extremely effective way. And it adds a lot of element of the hunt to the game. And that's something that's been true since the beginning, is that that's why it's called Hunternet. It was Hunternet this, Hunternet that, now it's Hunternet Starfighter. But the element of hunting and being hunted and stealth and catching your prey off guard has always been a key element of it.
And I have to say, when it works, it's like, I think I snuck up on you once or twice, and
yes.
it was insanely thrilling to be able to do that. As I was getting close, and you're like, wait, who's shooting at me? Oh my God. Guys, we had so much fun. Guys, we had so much fun with this playtest. We had just a blast. Now, one thing I gotta say that's very impressive: the physics, the engine, what you're flying around it. You can. I don't know if you can black out in space. I don't know. You probably can, but Can you? I don't know.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Okay, because you can in
very
this
much
game as well.
Oh,
I
yeah.
did a couple of times. But the physics and the way the flight feels is just fantastic, and it's kind of amazing that this is a Unity game, because I've played. I'm not going to mention any one specifically, but I've played other Unity games that do not feel this good. So how did you bend Unity to your will in order to make it feel this
Well,
good?
It took time. It's not because of Unity itself that it took time, but think about it. What did it take to make the physics that good? Well, it took a couple things. One, before I started to learn Unity, I was a pretty experienced programmer, so that helped. I started learning Unity back in 2009, so that's over a decade
Wow.
now. So
I
had a
didn't
lot
know
of
Unity's
experience with it.
I didn't know Unity's been around that long.
I was using Unity before it was cool. So, and technically, really, people like to say, "Oh, Unity game, Unreal games." Both of those games can make any kind of physics you want, make the physics feel how you want. I think both of them even use the same physics engine, but a lot of it comes down to the programmer and to the designer. And I think in this case, it's actually more of a designer issue rather than a programming issue. The programming helps because if you're a designer and you might have an idea of how you want it to fly, but you might not know how to get the physics engine to give you that result. I had the fortune of being a good programmer and then over time learning how to become a good designer. And the flight model is the way it is today through a lot of iteration. Starting from that first version, 8 years ago, I experimented a lot with lots of different flight models. Just to give you one example, one day, probably around 2014, I went back to Austin, Texas to visit a friend of mine, and he gave me a little quadcopter. And we played around his house playing, flying these little micro quads in first person view with like a headset. And I just fell and we raced around the house. The dogs were chasing. I fell in love with it. And what did I came back home. And this is the old version of the game, which the biggest fault that game had is that it wasn't focused. It just had everything in it. Stuff from X-Wing, stuff from like Aliens versus Predator, stuff from Mech Warriors, just had everything you can imagine in one game, right? Yes, yes. I ain't kidding. But I wanted to add another thing. At that point, I already had like 4 different flight models. And I said, we're going to add a quadcopter flight model. So I spent the weekend, making a quadcopter model. And, because by that time I had so much experience, the next play test, which is like the third day, I had it in the game. We were already racing around fighting it, and it fit pretty well in, and it felt good. And the only reason I was able to do it that quickly was because of all that experience. And then with Hunternet Starfighter, basically I took all that experience, getting a feel like what's the right level of acceleration, what's the right level of speed, how should the moment inertia feel, all that, how it should all feel. And I put that into a model that, like you said, is like I wanted to feel a little bit like X-Wing, that close quarters combat in particular, but give it the more freedom of movement that you saw in movies like in shows like Battlestar Galactica. And the first version of the Hunternet Starfighter flight model was really damn good. And then it was still a small community. A little bit later, once we, not that much later, literally like maybe months later, I decided to start inviting like high skill PvP players from Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, and other games. And they played it, and the game looked horrible. It looked really bad. But man, they all loved the flight model. And they're like, oh, this just feels great. So I knew it wasn't just me. So somehow I developed the right taste and the experience, and I have a clear vision too. I think that helps a lot. I've always had a clear vision in my mind how I want the battles to look and feel. And the good thing is that even if you're not somebody who spent thousands of hours like playing, whether it's space games or air games, even people who are complete novices, because the whole system is sort of pulling you in that direction, you can have 2 complete novices using joysticks for the first time, and they can have a pretty cool looking dogfight. I think that's part of what makes it, work. And
it works really well. Now, right now it's multiplayer only. But the net code that you apparently have come up with is, I mean, really well done. Because the other day, like, Hunter was streaming, I was recording, we're talking over Discord, blah 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 blah, and no one had any, like, Spaz and Hunter. You can chime in if you had issues, but I personally had no issues with lag or anything like that. It was smooth the entire time.
It was buttery smooth.
Yeah. How did you make that happen? Because that is such an important thing with games like this, especially when you have such fluid, fast movement where you have to be on your toes all the time. You have to have good netcode. Yeah,
no, it's very important. And if you look at a lot of the major space games, that's probably their biggest downfall. Their netcode is not that good. Why is my netcode that good? Again, it goes back that before I started working on Hunternet, I had experience doing network programming. I started programming when I was 13 years old. When I started working in indie games, I'd already had over a decade of professional programming experience. So I had a lot of experience going in.
Oh, damn.
And the very first version, the very first playtest, which was me playing against my brother-in-law, who was in a hotel room on a business trip in China using and this must have been, 8 years ago. So, wasn't a very good internet connection. He was staying in some cheap business hotel. And, the netcode was already working really well right from day one. And then I've had 8 years to refine it and improve upon it. My first external playtester, who was not a friend or family, was a guy from New Zealand, Beat Craze. He's still one of my moderators. One of the first messages he sent me is like, what kind of dark ritual sacrifice did you do to make this game played as well from New Zealand to San Francisco? So, and it just goes on and on. Like, I had another player of mine, I saw he responded on some Reddit thread, like, this is the best netcode I've ever experienced in the last 15 years, And I'm not saying that like any network game, there can be, times when, you're going to see lag, you're going to see things, it's not always going to be buttery smooth. But given the realities of the internet and data getting lost and ping going all over the place, it does a really good job at making it a fun, fair experience for everybody. And it's one of my, I knew going in that if I was going to make a multiplayer game, the netcode needed to be really good. And I think I've accomplished that.
Indeed.
Yeah, we can agree, at least on our end with our anecdotal evidence, that it was really, you had all these shots flying, all these ships flying around, and I never noticed another ship glitch out or anything. It was just really astounding. So right now, how many modes are in the game as of right now? It looked like there were like 4 or 5.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, the game is planned to have single player. The reason it's multiplayer only right now, because number one, that's the hardest thing. I wanted to make sure the multiplayer worked well. And number two, since we're testing, I wanted to keep all the community together, not, often little silos playing by themselves. But in terms of modes, there's basically several different team modes. Attrition being a typical team deathmatch, with each side having 2 home capital ships. There's Capital Ship Assault, which is a variation of that team mode where instead of winning by destroying the largest number of starfighters, you win by destroying all the defensive guns on the starfighters, which on the capital ships, which is 166 between the two of them. And that mode is going to be further evolved, because the idea is you want to blow up the capital ship, not just strip her of her defenses. But the game is a work in progress, so that's not in there yet. And that mode will also have more other things added to it. Everything you would expect in a battle between capital ships. Limited supply based on the capital ships, being able to damage them, take them apart, so forth. Then there's also a survival team mode, which is like a team deathmatch, but you only get 1 life. Then there are 2 free-for-all modes. Both of them are called Bounty Hunt. There's another one. There's 2 complete free-for-all modes. Bounty Hunt, and there's Bounty Hunt Duels. So Bounty Hunt is a free-for-all mode where you're scored based on your performance. So as you get more kills, you're more notorious, you have a higher bounty on your head. So people are incentivized to go after the top players instead of trying to farm the weakest players to get their score up to and win the free-for-all. So that's Bounty Hunt. Then there's Bounty Hunt Duel mode, which is basically designed specifically for training. Every time you kill somebody, you repair. But it can also be really fun free-for-all mode when you're playing against people of similar skill levels, because in that mode, you get a really nice element where it's normal when you're playing in a free-for-all that people want to take advantage of whoever's hurt the most, right? They want to look for people who are engaged in a fight and then come in at the last moment and vulch the weaker player. In this mode, since the moment you kill your opponent, you get a brand new ship. All your damage goes away. Your energy reserves get topped off. You get these nice moments where somebody's trying to come in from behind and shoot you down, but you kill the guy you're going up against and you switch around and you switch tables on them. So there's that mode, and then the last mode is called Squad Wars, and it's multiple squad team battle mode. So you can form squads of up to 4 pilots, but there's multiple of those squads. There can be 10 of those squads or even more depending on the server. And some of those squads might be AI squads, but any of them can be human squads. As humans join the server, basically the AI starts dropping off to keep the battle of the same size. And that mode was added recently. Actually, it was added after I heard about Star Wars Squadrons. I won't lie. They did 2 squads. I said, no, we're going to do 42 squads. But yeah. And those are the current modes. The idea is to do way more, but yeah.
Right, of course. And I did have to say the AI was also gave, I thought, a pretty good fight. I thought I did a pretty decent job as well. So what kind of single player content are you planning?
So my plan is this. I want to make, what I actually want and what I end up delivering is going to, of course, depend a lot on these next few weeks and how much attention I can bring to the game, and then how much resources I can put together. But my idea is, ideally for Hunternet Starfighter, because I have future plans if it goes well, is to make something similar to the original X-Wing in scope, but imagine everything in the original X-Wing supported optional online support. So all the campaigns, the race maps, everything, the custom missions, all that content, if you could also play it in either co-op or versus, depending on how the mission is set up. And that, to me, felt like a good target goal.
Yeah, no, that's a great goal, because like right now, I think for games like this, there are only basically 2 other games that let you do that. There's X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, obviously, and Star Lancer, which both let you play co-op in their campaigns. But that's it. Like, no one else has really done anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. That's really exciting. Because, God, some of those X-Wing missions could have really benefited from getting some help from your friends.
Yeah, for sure.
Jesus Christ.
For sure. I mean, I grew up playing that game, so I know it well, and I think it's a good blueprint. But there's plenty of room to do my own spin and maybe do a few things better. And the other thing is that game was made by a relatively small team, and I think it's an ambitious enough scope. It'll give you a full game experience. It won't feel like this game is not finished. But it's small enough that I can keep my team small and focused, and that we can actually finish it. Because I don't want to end up taking years and years to finish Hunternet Starfighter. I want to finish Hunternet Starfighter, and if it does well, then expand upon it. But actually go through the whole process of like development to release the damn thing.
See, that sounds healthy. Unlike some other projects we won't mention the name of, but everyone probably knows what we're talking about. So right now you're in a closed alpha. What is the plan going forward? What is the plan going forward for, like, are you going to do a Kickstarter? Are you going to have an open alpha? Like, what is your current plan to get from where you are now to release?
Yeah. So, my current plan, my current focus is simply getting the word out, because I've estimated that, probably less than just a tiny fraction of 1% of people who are into space games have even heard of Hunternet Starfighter. And until now, there was no surprise, because, I didn't do any serious promotional work of it. I'm hoping this podcast is going to help. I think it's going to help. But I really need to basically let people know that this game exists, so they can try it. If that goes well and I can get the word out and enough people know that it exists, and the reaction continues to be as positive as it has been. Because that's the very encouraging part, is when I actually managed to get it in front of people, the reaction is uniformly. I mean, I don't remember the last time somebody had a negative reaction, which was not the case with the previous versions that I talked about that were all over the place. I mean, people react to it very, very strongly. So assuming that it continues to go well and I get an audience, then the next step is to raise funding, because I am just one guy. I am not I'm a programmer, and I've learned to be a game designer over the last 10 years. But I'm not an artist. I'm not a musician. I'm not a special effects guy. There's a limit to what I can do by myself, right? I've kind of pushed it almost as far as I can go right now by myself. So the next phase would be raising funding, and I will either do a Kickstarter. And the reason I haven't done a Kickstarter till now, because I felt like there was no point in doing a Kickstarter if I can't get the word out that I'm even running a Kickstarter. Because I think that's the biggest problem people have with a Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, that is a big problem. Is like you start from nothing, and Kickstarter. It's like, who are you?
Exactly.
Why should I give you any money? I've never heard of you before this. Yeah, having that base already under your feet before starting the Kickstarter will definitely be a benefit to you. Definitely. Yeah. So I totally see where you're coming from. And hopefully this podcast will help.
I think it will.
But what you've been able to do mostly by yourself. Someone in the chat, a crazed gunman, said, if you give money, the game will be good. Pinky swear. Pinky swear. It's great. God, I totally lost my train of thought now. Thanks, gunman. Damn it. God damn it. That was funny.
Well, I'll add that if you have that base of players who are already interested, word of mouth can spread from there.
Yeah.
And that's a key point here.
Yeah. I think at the end it always goes back to the player, right? If you're not making something that the players like, that they connect with, that they're enjoying, then why are you going to kickstart? Why even release? And that's been my mentality from the beginning. And even though I've been working on it 8 years, I never came to this point before, this far along, because I didn't have that confidence that this was something that I could kickstart. And I didn't want to do a kickstart. And what ends up happening, I feel, with Kickstarters, since it's so hard to convince people to give your money, you end up promising a lot of things or painting this big dream. And sure, my company is called CPU Dreams, but I understand that dreams are dreams. And I wouldn't, if you do this Kickstarter, you promise a bunch of things, and then the reality is you're going to have a hard time pulling it off. So I felt more comfortable doing a Kickstarter when I felt like I knew what I could do. I knew that it was something that people wanted, and do it then, rather than trying to hype it up to try to get people to back it and then find out that I can't even build it with the money that I got.
Right.
And I think that's what happens,
I
wish it was still back in the old days, a Kickstarter where just doing a Kickstarter would give you all the eyeballs, but that's not the case anymore.
But now people are really not tired. There's a fatigue. There is a fatigue.
Yeah.
There is a Kickstarter fatigue, because a lot of projects have upended and died. But Kickstarter is still pretty much one of the best ways to do this. And I think not doing it now, but waiting till the sheen of Star Wars Squadrons wears off to where people will be like, oh, this is great, or oh, this is crap. We need something else. Is probably a smart move. Like, get out of under that, get away from that spotlight first, and then do a Kickstarter. Because, like I was saying, we don't know if Squadrons is going to be any good. We have no idea. Yeah. I mean, it could be. We hope it is. Yeah. But even if it is, your game, I think, still offers more. Because that game has, what, 3 modes? I think that game has, 3 modes? Maybe?
Yeah.
And
I think it's 3, yeah.
I think it's 3. And I'm going to be honest, those 3 modes did not look very impressive to me. They really didn't. It's like, oh, deathmatch, and oh, take out the cap ship. It's like, how are you going to add variety to this? When you only have 3 modes. So hopefully Squadrons will be good, but even if it is good, there's still, I think, more room for games like this, because not a ton of people are making cockpit based, space fighter games, especially ones that are this good. Because I'm going to be honest again. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I feel like no matter how Squadrons does, it's a good thing, because let's say it's a good game. Well, that's going to give this genre a lot more attention. It's definitely, I think it's definitely going to be a case of like a rising tide lifts all boats, and people are going to want to play. Call of Duty does well, Battlefield does well. There's a X-Wing did well, Wing Commander did well. There's room for multiple games, and just like how with Microsoft Flight Simulator bringing attention to people buying joysticks. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people say, I just bought a HOTAS for Microsoft Flight Simulator and I was looking for other games I could play with it. And I think that's going to happen even more so with Squadrons.
That's true.
There definitely has been a rise on the HOTAS stuff, because I know a buddy of mine, he was like, hey, you said you got a joystick for playing Squadrons, right? And I was like, no, I have a joystick. I just happen to like also be getting Squadrons to play. He's like, oh, well, what one do you have? And I was like, well, I've got this X52 Pro. And he's like, is it good? And I'm like, well, I've had it for like the last 7 years. I like it. So, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people, especially with Squadrons coming out, and I've seen like a rise of people on YouTube that are like playing, X-Wing Alliance, modded all up in like excitement and preparation. And it's just so funny, like seeing all these people come out of the woodwork who have never played these classic games being like, I'm so excited for this new game. And I'm like, Yep.
Like, I think I saw one YouTuber, it's like, I have never played a game like this before or something. I'm like, how old are you? How have you been gaming?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man.
I've been seeing people who are doing like first time playthroughs of like X-Wing Alliance, and they're like, I'm getting ready for Squadrons to come out, so I'm gonna play its like spiritual predecessor. And I'm like, okay, I grew up with this. It just feels, some of it also feels a little awkward, because it's just like growing up with it, and just like seeing all the mistakes people are making as like a longtime fan. But at the same time, it's also exciting, because, as Fernando says, like, with a rising tide, I think this is going to be nothing but good. We've been getting a lot of really good space games, whether it be like 4X, or whether it be some kind of strategy, or whether it be third-person shooters or whatever. I mean, we've definitely had Elite. We've had Star Citizen in development for like forever, Rebel Galaxy Outlaw. So we've had some definite first person perspectives come out there, but I don't think, I think Elite tried it and failed, and there's reasons why it failed with their arena stuff.
Yeah.
I think that there are games from the past that we're learning from, X-Wing Alliance, or the X-Wing series being one of them, the Freelancer, Starlancer stuff. We haven't really had good space dogfighting style games, or sim dogfighting style games, like what we're seeing with Hunternet, like what we're seeing with potentially with Squadrons. And people, ever since EA put out the new Battlefronts, this is what people have been asking for. Like, when are we going to get a new X-Wing? When are we going to get a new like Rogue Squadron? And I mean, between what Hunternet's doing and what Squadrons is doing, I see like nothing but pluses from both of those things. So,
yeah, I agree. And I feel like when I saw Squadrons came out, I was like, man, they're making the X-Wing game that I was trying to make, But then I saw it and I was like, man, consider I'm just one guy with zero budget, I compare pretty favorably with this game.
Yeah.
There's tons of things they don't do.
And they're doing something different though. Like, they're doing the sim thing with theirs, but they're also adding up like the power-ups and like the
support ship that could like magically repair you and stuff.
Yeah,
like
there's
that.
some Jedi Starfighter shenanigans going on with
it.
This,
feels like a hybrid, not pure X-Wing.
It really does.
Right,
it really does.
Yeah. So and that's where I think, like, for example, yours is going to shine, because I play yours and I feel like I'm playing almost like a modern Freelancer or a modern I don't know how to else to describe it. I think you've just done something really well with your flight model and with the mechanics. It's just your flight model and the mechanics of the gameplay are just something rare. We don't see a lot of that.
That's good to hear, man.
Yeah, and there's so much and going back to the UI, I love, what is that, the smart targeting thing where it brings up a list of what's around you and
the scanner array.
Yeah. No, it's the smart target thing, right? Where it pops up a list of what's around you, and
it's called the scanner array.
Oh, okay. I thought the button was smart target. I apologize.
No.
But yeah, I really like that. You can target, like, you can have a list up of the targets. Like, say I wanted to target you really quickly because you're my nemesis right now. There you are. I have a range on you now. I can target you. It just made things so, because when you're in the cockpit, you can't spend a lot of time flicking buttons. You need to like figure out where you're going next and put yourself where you want to go, and not worry about target this and target that. And I think you've come up with a really elegant way to handle all that. And who can say if Squadrons can do the same?
Yeah.
I don't keep meaning to bring up Squadrons, but it is prescient and relevant.
Yeah, definitely. I don't mind at all. I mean, it's been on my mind a lot. Like when I saw it, I thought, man, because when I saw it, when they first announced it, I was like, okay, I have this much time. Originally, I was going to do a free fly week at the end of September. And the goal was, let me try to get as many people to try my game before they try Squadrons, so that when they try Squadrons, they're looking at it from having already had the experience of playing my game. But I decided, that's crazy. Just it's too little time. But I was like, what can I do to make sure that people will still give my game another look after this other game with the much bigger publicity and budget and the license everybody has heard of. But then I realized that like I said, rising tide lifts all boats, and I think people will look for other games even if Squadrons is good and even if they like it.
Yeah,
but I didn't even have a computer that could do VR. I had always planned on doing VR, but until when Squadrons was announced, my laptop was 5 years old and it wasn't VR ready. I couldn't do VR. I didn't even have a VR headset, and I didn't even have a computer that could record 180p footage at 60 FPS. So I didn't have the resources, and but now I feel like if I get the visibility and the resources, the game will do fine.
Yeah. I mean, people are going to need something to play that joystick with once the allure of Squadrons wears off. I've seen people, like, I would never thought of buying a joystick. They bought it for, like, the PS4 version of Squadrons. I'm like, what? And that'll work on a PC, too, so it's kind of perfect. They bought, like, this little Thrustmaster for their PS4 just for Squadrons. I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Yeah, little thing.
Oh, I added Jedi Mode because of Squadrons. I'll say that.
Okay, what is Jedi Mode? You have to tell us what Jedi Mode is. You brought that up the other day. What is Jedi Mode?
Yeah, so when you go to refit your ship, you can pick the kind of targeting computer you have, and you have two options. You can pick the default, which is called pips, and you can pick tracers. And when you have pips, are those little lead indicators that you aim at the lead indicator, and if the ship doesn't move, you'll probably hit them, right? When you play Jedi Mode, you don't get any indicators at all. You just get a fixed reticle on the center of your screen. So you have to use the Force. You have to figure out where to shoot.
Oh, damn.
Which X-Wing did wasn't quite. What X-Wing did is there was an invisible pip, and when you were aiming at the invisible pip, then your aiming reticle would change to green to let you know your aim was correct. And I think that's what Squadrons does as well. It changes the color. Whereas this does is there's nothing. It doesn't go green or red. You just have to fire and look at the tracers, the bullet tracers, and see where they're flying, and see they're flying to the left or to the right, and use that to adjust your aim.
I'm going to have to try that. That's amazing.
And the other thing that makes it interesting, and I think that this is, again, something that I have never seen anybody else do, is that, well, why would you do that? You'd just be handicapping yourself. Right? The other guy can aim with a pip, and you have to do it the hard way. You'll just get your butt handed to you every time. But if you switch to that simpler target computer, you get higher every time you fire your projectile. The cost of firing it is lower, uses less energy, and since it uses less energy, you can fire that weapon more, You have more energy left over for your shield. So there's an advantage to doing that. So if you can learn to aim without the pip, you have an advantage. So that allows people to fly how they want to. You can fly with pips, without pips. There's a clear advantage to doing so. And some of my best, well, one of my best pilots, Craze Gunman, flies without pips all the time, and he slaughters people. And the other advantage that it has is it's like playing with weighted clothing. You know, like those kung fu movies or Dragon Ball Z. They have this like heavy clothing on, and then before the battle, I'm taking this off, and then they're a whole nother level. That's how it feels. You play in Jedi mode. It forces you to pay attention to where you're aiming, how your ship is moving, how your opponent's ship is moving, and then you get killed anyways. You come back, you turn on your pips, and you just feel stronger because now your own brain is anticipating what the actual targeting computer is not. So it's a small thing, but it has had great dividends in my opinion.
I'm gonna have to try it. Now, right now you have multiple servers set up. You have, like, we played on the Dallas server, but that doesn't mean like when you join a server, you're playing with everyone on that server, because you can create instances within those servers. Is that how that works?
No. So currently there are 7 servers spread across the world. 3 in the United States, 2 in Europe, 1 in South America and Brazil, and 1 in Australia. Now, each of those servers is just one big instance. So you join, everybody who's on that server, you will see them. The community is not big enough to make sense to like split people off. But what I did tell you, and this is the plan, is because I think Hunter asked me about private hosting. And my idea is that I will add private instances. So you could join a server and then have that server spin off a private instance. And that private instance can either be an open instance that everybody can see and join, or a private instance where they can see it, but they need to enter a password to join it. That's the idea.
So those are instances based per server. So that's interesting. So it'd be like you have to join a server, then you join the instance.
You would pick the server, and behind the scenes, it might say San Francisco, but there could be multiple servers in San Francisco. Does that make sense?
Sure. But then, like I guess my question is then, like, how do you, if you're joining just a single server, then how do you see that instance?
Well, I haven't built the UI for it, but if there were more than one, then I might just list the number of instances next to the name, and you can click a button to expand. But it's definitely based on a more of a server browser model where you can see what's happening. The game was not designed, I think we talked about a little bit when we were playing, it's not designed around traditional matchmaking, which I think is a big difference between Hunternet Starfighter and Squadrons, where that felt very much like a matchmaking based game where you hop onto a queue of one of the modes that they provide, and then you get put into matches. Whereas this is more of a server browser game, which I think facilitates more tightly knit communities and also works better with if the community is not huge, which I hope the community eventually becomes huge. But as you know, when it's starting out,
I agree with that. I prefer like something like Unreal Tournament, where you have a list of servers and like, oh, there's Capture the Flag. I want to play that, rather than like. As much as I love like Titanfall 2, it's like, okay,
are you gonna add a Capture the Flag mode? Oh my god!
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. You totally should.
Interesting for sure. I did have a sports mode in the past.
Like steal the warp core or something. I don't know.
The other thing for the multiplayer is it's drop in, drop out. And that, so yeah, they have these instances, but you don't have to be there when it starts. You can join mid-match, right? You can always join the server. You can leave and join at your will, which is an important part. A lot of these games, everybody has to be there from the beginning. And if somebody drops out, then maybe if you're lucky, an AI will take their spot. Whereas with Hunternet, you don't have that. But in terms of like sports modes, yeah. I mean, I'm focusing right now on like the core. So I'm using X-Wing as my template, but going forward, I could definitely see modding and custom missions and
if you want some good examples of vehicular sports insanity, look up Test Drive Eve of Destruction. It was a PlayStation 2 / Xbox game, but it had soccer and it had a bunch of other things like and like some of the modes in that have not been replicated since, and that'd be a good template to look at, I think. Because I still load up that game on my PS2 every now and again because it's so great.
Oh no! Have you guys heard? That sounds good. I wrote it down. I'm definitely gonna check it out. And I'll in the past, with some years ago, when I was still being a little bit more experimental than I am right now, I joked with some of my players that we should do like Rocket League, but with spaceships instead of race cars.
Oh, that'd be good. Ooh, Destruction Derby.
Right?
Destruction Derby with spaceships. Oh, can you imagine? That'd be great.
And this flight model works really great for racing. We have done racing with this flight model and previous flight models. It's just so much fun with the crash damage, spinning a control, the inertia, everything. And you could do a race circuit, and then it's not that hard. You do one race. Some races are without guns, pure racing. Other races with guns.
Oh man,
so there's many different ways you can slice it.
Oh, that's great.
Have you guys?
Good.
Mm-hmm.
No, good.
I was gonna say, have you guys heard of the game Subspace?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a classic. It's still around. It's been around since the mid '90s, and it's now called Subspace Continuum, which you can download for free on Steam. And yeah, tons of people still play that thing. And that thing's got that thing's got some crazy modes to it. If I recall correctly. I haven't played it. Yeah, I haven't played it in a while because I am not good at it. And you get in there if you're not good at it and you're not going to last long. It's like, okay, I'm just going to go play something else because it's like you guys have been playing. You guys have been playing since 1996, and I have not.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go.
That's when I started playing 1996 Subspace.
Yeah,
man, if you go some of these older games where there's like still a community of like it's not fun.
Well, it's fun for them.
It's fun for them, but it's hard for newcomers.
Just playing facing worlds, like you got people that have been playing that since the map first came out, and you're just
right.
You've clearly never left. All right.
Well, there is a mode. There is a mode. I was going to say that we use in Quintet, and you can totally take over if you want to use it. I'm totally cool with it. It involved having rings that would randomly spawn, and the locations would be different where they spawn, of course, and everybody's racing to get to run through the ring. So that's your racing mode, but you also have your ship powers, so you could use your guns on other players or knock them out of the way, shoot the ring itself so that you turn it, and then they fly through it, or they, instead of flying through, they fly off at an angle. Yeah. So you could totally do something like that.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of room.
I would love racing because there haven't been enough space racing games. There was one that came out a few years ago, but then was quickly abandoned called Orbital Racer, which was amazing.
I saw your podcast on that.
Yeah, it's an amazing, and then like it fizzled out, which is such a shame. So to know that there might be racing coming to this, that makes me even more excited because I would play the hell out of racing in this. Oh my god. Oh my god.
I mean, at the end of the day, racing is not that hard to add on top of an existing
I can't
game,
imagine
right?
it is. I can't imagine it is. I mean, you have the physics already. All you need are like rings or something.
Right.
To keep track and mark progression. That's all, and who's winning. And I can't imagine that would be too hard to implement over top of what you already have. But yeah, another great thing would be like capture the warp core, like Hunter said. Like you have I was thinking like these battleships, you have like an open area in the middle, and you have to fly through it to get the warp core, and then deposit that warp core back in one of your battleships. That would be fun.
No, definitely. Yeah, and I want to, right now there's one map, but I've had other maps in the past that either be multiple maps, and I want maps of all types.
Wait, there's only one map? There's only one map?
Yeah, there's one map with two themes to it. Yeah.
I didn't even know that. Sorry, did we only play on one map the other day?
Yeah. The whole time you were on the same map.
Holy crap! Really, that was the same. I had no idea. Well done. I had no idea that was the same map. I thought that was maybe a different map with different asteroids and stuff. I did not know. Wow, that's just one map. We got 2 hours at least out of just one. Wow.
Just one we map. Have guys with thousands and thousands of hours, so I wanted to make sure the game could stand on its own. And it didn't need a buttload of content to be fun. But of course, I wouldn't release a game without multiple maps. So the idea is there'll be multiple maps, and the next map I want to work on is some sort of map with a lot of interior space, like the inside of the Death Star. It might end up being like an asteroid city, but something with a lot more tightly packed, more obstruction than you would see in an asteroid field, with more recognizable sort of landmarks.
Someone's getting some Descent influence going on.
Yeah.
No problems with me. I really did like how...
No, not at all.
What complaints? Nope.
I really did like how you could also use the terrain, in our case, asteroids, as a defense. Like, there were multiple times where I was getting shot at, and I would, like, hug an asteroid.
Oh, yeah.
It was great. So adding more stuff, like maybe Nebula and stuff, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Nebula, I think, would be good for, like, breaking sensor locks. You can actually use the asteroids to break sensor locks. So somebody has you targeted. If you break the line of sight and you go into silent running, then it will break the lock.
Ooh,
they will have no clue where you're at.
Good to know.
So, but yeah, Nebula is definitely something. You want Nebula you can go into, or maybe they'll be a little different than asteroids. With the asteroid, you can't see them, but with the Nebula, maybe you're inside the Nebula. You can see out, but they can't see in.
I like that.
That's totally my style. I mean, that's like hunting from the tall grass for your little prey.
It's kind of that's a little Wrath of Connie, little sub warfare and
that is
exactly
great.
Or like the fog in Freelancer, they have those missions where you're in the inside the nebula. I think it was a nebula, but it was those where you can barely see anything.
Oh, I think you mean Free Space.
Free Space, not Freelancer. Free Space
with the amazing nebula that really has not been replicated since.
But imagine that within a multiplayer map.
Oh god, flying around,
being able to go in and out of it, and having the battleships you can even warp in a battleship. That's the thing. I mean, I haven't implemented, but the idea is the battleships would, like I said, similar to X-Wing. So what can the X-Wing battleships do? They can warp in and warp out, and they can move about. They can launch fighters, right? That sort of stuff needs to be in the game, and you can combine that with Space Nebula. Again, that's something that didn't exist in X-Wing, but I think is a nice logical addition and extension to it to bring it to the 2020s. And you get a lot by mixing those things. And for that the game mode you were theorizing about with the warp core, what if you took the warp core from one ship and you brought it into the interior of another ship, your Death Star or whatever? That would be so
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, because I can only think of really one space game that took terrain seriously, and that was Klingon Academy, where you had asteroid fields. You could muck around in the rings of gas giants and whatnot, and also use planetary atmosphere against your opponent. Just amazing stuff. So there's definitely a lot of potential here. Definitely a lot of potential. There's me trying to fly into a refit area and not knowing what the hell I'm doing.
So here's a fun idea going off of what Brian just suggested. You have to steal 3 warp cores from 3 enemy ships, bring them back to your super weapon to power it. Ooh. And then once it's powered, it can start destroying the capital ships on the other side.
Yeah, that would be cool. And this is part that goes into my philosophy, Spaz, is like, I want Hunternet Starfighter. That's why I said inspired by Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica. Obviously, it's neither of those IPs, but I wanted to do the kind of things that fans like myself of those IPs are dying to see and take part of in the game. And who wouldn't want to take part in like powering up your own Death Star and then watching the Death Star go to town on your enemies they were just fighting a moment ago? I mean, that's a classic dream that you want to live. And that's sort of my long-term vision for the game. Like I said, I want to release Hunternet Starfighter, but the idea is if Hunternet Starfighter does well, follow it up with Hunternet Armada and follow that up with Hunternet Galaxy. Each of them building on the previous game and like doing that kind of wish fulfillment for people like you and me and us, I think, that don't have the time to use the sort of more modern approach, whereas it's like, I don't know, this is a little bit of a detour, but with Hunternet, I really want it to be very time efficient. You can get in there and you can have fun and you can enjoy, and maybe you're impacting the world. There can be world progression, but you never feel like you're having to grind to get to the good stuff. And that's what I want to do with the Hunternet Galaxy sometime down the road.
Yeah, will there be any kind of progression for the player, or is it just all entirely skill based?
The progression for Hunternet Starfighter will be like X-Wing, earning medals. And if it's in a campaign, then maybe you'll get to fly a better ship. You're going to be a regular Joe in a regular Space Navy. So depending on your performance, you might get equipped. You might get an experimental fighter. You might, if you perform badly, you might have to play with the broken down scraps that the guys like in Battlestar Galactica, they have like these Vipers and they're all falling apart, and maybe you go out to the field and it already has hull damage, right? And maybe the laser is only firing one shot instead of two. So that will be that kind of progression in the game, and of course your own personal skill progression. And then if I do Hunternet Galaxy, my idea is you take the elements from Hunternet Starfighter and you use it to build up a galaxy you can explore. So those instances we talked about where you could have your own private instances, those might be individual planets or systems or points of interest on a bigger map. But it's all directly built on what came before it. And that game might have progression, but again, it's more like progression is in the game in a way that makes sense. Because not the RPG-ness. Because I feel like RPG games, they started out as trying to simulate reality or simulate a fantasy world, but they sort of become a thing of their own, where it's like, okay, what's my level? How much experience do I need to do this? But I think we can model progression in a more natural way today, rather than just using this abstraction on top of an abstraction that you have with RPGs. So in Hunternet Galaxy, there's multiple maps, and you can get progression by claiming territory or being able to have access to certain components in certain areas. But it's more in a way that makes sense, that would make sense in the real world. Because in the real world, we don't have experience points. We don't have stat numbers that we look at and we like, okay, which stat should I put the point in? Not that kind of progression. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I was figuring, but I just wanted to ask about it because it's always good to have. You can look at your medal case, or you can look at how many hours you played or how many kills you have, just to know how you're doing.
The game does have stats already. It's I'm not doing a good job of showing them, but if that same menu that you can use to refit your ship and to set up your joystick, below the scanner array entry, there's a intelligence reports entry, and that will show you everybody's persistent stats. You can get a short list of everybody who happens to be on the server at the same time as you, so you can check out the intelligence reports on your opponents to see how good they are, or you can get all the intelligence reports on everybody who has ever played on that server. Or you can also look at leaderboards. So there's some leaderboards. Right now there's only one. Basically, it's a leaderboard based on how many bots you can kill in a single 6-minute short mission. But I'm going to keep working on that and exposing it on different places. So it's not just in that menu. Let you browse it in the main menu. Maybe let you look at it on a website. But the stats are already, there's pretty significant amount of stats there. And it can be really fun browsing through there and seeing, how good somebody is at killing bots, how good they are against the capital ships, how good they are against other players, which weapons they use, and that kind of thing. And that's persistent.
Right. So we do have to start wrapping up. I apologize. I wish we didn't. We could talk about this all day. But friends, right now, if you go to the itch.io page for Hunternet Starfighter, you'll find a form there that you can fill out to gain access to the closed alpha. And their Discord community is really friendly. I've been over there several times. Can you also get the form on cpudreams.com?
Yeah, that's the main site. It's where I recommend. And then the Discord, you can get the form there. You can also get it at youtube.com/c/cpudreams. Those are probably the best 3 places. The itch.io page, I don't think it shows, since the game you have to sign up to get it. You can't download it immediately. I don't think it shows up in the itch.io search forms. That's the main reason I wanted to point to those
it does.
Places.
It does not. I double checked that. It does not. But yeah, friends. Okay, so yeah, I didn't see that the form is already on your homepage. I apologize. So you can go to the homepage or the itch.io page to fill out a form to get into the closed alpha. It's you really should, if you have any interest at all in games like, and you're listening to this podcast, you probably do. But if you have any interest at all in cockpit-based space fighter combat, this really is astounding. Like it not only shows you what a small team can do, but it also shows you what a small team can do with enough creativity to try and separate itself from the pack, which is, I think, definitely where this game is going. Like, as Fernando said, even if Squadrons does well, there not only is still room for this, but it can definitely help get players into something that players that want something more than Squadrons has to offer. And I think this could be that game. So again, it is called Hunternet Starfighter. It is currently in closed alpha, even though it already feels and flies really great. Yeah, Hunter, you should send me a link to your Twitch stream from the other day so I can include it in the podcast notes.
There isn't a private chat, but I think I should probably clip it because it's like part 2 of because I was streaming earlier that morning, so I'll clip it with just the Hunternet stuff and send it to you. Okay, great, yeah. Because I only recorded video for the background of this, but you actually live streamed it, and we had so much fun, you guys. I just can't relay how much fun we had playing this. And there's a spectator mode, which is amazing. So we're probably going to be using that for tournaments and whatnot.
Yep.
So this game really is going to have just about everything. So Fernando, I want to thank you for joining us today in the middle of your busy afternoon. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure, Brian.
Oh, ours too. And we're definitely going to keep track of this game. So folks, this is the only stream for today. I sadly have a work meeting this afternoon, so I can't do a stream this afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow at 6 a.m. I'm not sure we're going to stream tomorrow at 6 a.m. We'll be back tomorrow at 6 a.m. And then I'm not sure what's happening for the podcast next week because I'm still... I've got feelers out, but no one's confirmed yet. So we might do a topic show or we might get a guest. I'm not sure yet. But I want to thank you all for listening and hanging out with us today. You guys are the best. And again, the game is Hunternet Starfighter. You can sign up for the closed alpha if you want to give it a shot. It's not a huge game. It won't take up a huge footprint on your hard drive, but it offers quite a bit for how early this is. So thanks everyone for hanging out and watching today, and we will see you next time. Have a good one, y'all. Bye-bye.